Recorded live on the campus of Hampton University, this is HamptonYOU Live.
Hello, my name is Felicia Blow. Welcome to HamptonYOU Live and our roundtable talk on philanthropy in the African American community and its impact on HBCUs. HamptonYOU Live is brought to you by the Hampton University Office of Alumni Affairs in its ongoing efforts to energize and bring relevant, timely, topical discussions to the community. For this edition of HamptonYOU Live, I will serve as your moderator. I'd like to begin with a few thought-provoking statistics. HBCUs represent just 3% of the U.S. higher education landscape, but they educate nearly 1/3 of all African Americans who pursue a college degree. HBCUs have educated 80% of all Black judges, 50% of all Black lawyers, 21% of all Black business school graduates got their starts at an HBCU, and 25% of all Black science, engineering, math, and technology graduates come out of an HBCU. And there's many, many, many more statistics that we can talk about. So the biggest thing that I can say is HBCUs are a critically important vehicle in the African American community. We're going to have a very lively conversation on Black philanthropy with our esteemed panelists, and they include Tom Hasty, Town Bank Senior Executive Vice President and a Hampton University, or should I say Institute, alum. Jamelia Shipman, a Christopher Newport University development and fundraising expert and also a CNU alum. Terry Butler, a Norfolk State University grad and a professor of music at Norfolk State. Quincy Rice, welcome. She is a recent Hampton University grad and a soon-to-be music teacher. And we also have Leon Cole from Jackson State University, and we all have to be scared of him because he is a professor of physics, and he knows the Pythagorean theorem, and he's a professor at Christopher Newport University. Welcome, all of you. I'm very excited about this conversation. Black philanthropy is something that you don't hear all that much about, so I'm interested in you all's perspective. We're going to start with you. How do you define philanthropy, and what do you think it means in the Black community?
In the Black community, I think it means several things. First of all, if you want to go back to the Latin Greek era, when we're talking about basically love of humankind, but then in our Black community now, we potentially would think of it as a fundraiser or a person that's a benefactor to a certain degree, if you will, to basically support and undergird entities that are going on, institutions, hospitals, good causes, and so forth. And I think sometimes the meaning of philanthropy gets confused in its travels.
I'm curious about that. I'm already going to pick up. You say the meaning gets confused.
Yes.
Can you expound on that? What do you mean?
Just again, going back to the original meaning, love of humankind, through going beyond the call of duty, to give of oneself as a sacrifice. But now we're basically linking it at most times, in my opinion, to the dollar.
Excellent point. So Jamelia, how would you define philanthropy and particularly what it means to the Black community?
Well, the Black community has always been generous and always been philanthropic. We just never had that label. We knew it as a spiritual component, a pillar of our community. We always helped those in our community who needed help, whether it was a meal or sending a kid to college or someone's car broke down. Everybody would go into their coffers and pull out funds to help support a family. So we never had that institutional label, and I think that's where the confusing aspect comes in, because we just see it as doing good, doing right, helping out my brother. And so therefore Black philanthropy is it's common, it's natural, it's just a part of who we are. It's only recently that we've added that label, that maybe academic term of philanthropy. And when you think of philanthropy, you think about Rockefeller, who,
Yes.
you know, had a lot to do with Hampton University, or Carnegie, or, you know, there's some big names. That's when you think about philanthropy. But every day, we just do good. We do right. We do the right thing.
So Tom, you are a 1977 graduate. You gave that date to me, so I hope it's okay that I share it.
I was 14 when I graduated.
I love it. But I am interested and intrigued by this kind of progression and understanding of the word philanthropy, and especially as it relates to the church.
Yeah.
Can you give some more
Yeah,
insight?
I guess I have a slightly different definition for philanthropy. I think as black folks, we all learn to give in the church. But I see a difference between giving and philanthropy. Giving doesn't necessarily hurt. Philanthropy is going to leave a mark. Philanthropy is generous gifts. So when I think about philanthropy, I'm thinking about large gifts that are making a statement. I think we all find it easy. I mean, we all grew up in the church where the plate came down the row and everybody threw in $1. I mean, your kid, you threw in 50 cents. Well, it depends on how you learned. Now, I guess once I got to about 10 or 11 years old, I was getting an allowance. And the folks stopped giving me money to put in the plate at church. I had to put in some of my allowance. So I guess I was being philanthropic then, because that hurt. But it's sort of where that giving does not become a barrier because we learn to give that way. I think that really is a difference between us and the majority community, because they don't necessarily grow up that way, but they tend to grow up thinking philanthropically more so than we do.
Interesting point of view. So I want to pivot because we have a new grad, a young alum of Hampton University. And one of the things I can tell you from personal experience, growing up, we didn't hear about the importance of giving, the importance of giving back, and even use of the word philanthropy, as you alluded to, Jamelia. So Quincy, I'm curious, how do you and your generation and millennials, Gen Z, think about philanthropy and giving back?
I don't think we think of it in that word.
Oh, okay.
I completely agree that it's just recently that we put that title on the word. To be honest, the first time I heard the word philanthropy, and this might be funny to some, but the first time I heard it was on a movie. It was actually in the movie House Bunny, because they talked about how they had to go give money towards their philanthropy. And I might have been in the 10th grade when I saw this, and that was the first time I really heard about it. But I was raised in church. So I always knew, you give, and that's what you do. Now, I'm a very giving person, so naturally, I also believe in giving as giving of your time, giving of your talents, and giving of your resources, yes, if you have them. So I think a lot of people now, at least in my generation, feel like we're seeing just stockpile money, basically, because we don't really know how this whole life thing is going to play out. We're trying to now live in, as recent grads, in this, era where, you have to save. You have to save in order to pay back debt.
You think you and your crew,
we
y'all
have
saving?
To. Well, millennials, we trying to buy houses. Okay. And I will say that I can't speak for Gen Z because I'm a millennial. But I know millennials are trying to buy houses. One of the things we were fighting for was pay our student loans off, because what are we going to do as a generation? We are going to invest in things like houses and things that actually do appreciate. I know a lot of my friends want to invest in houses and things that are going to appreciate. And I think that there's a lot of people in Gen Z that don't know that as well, because we're also seeing spend.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
if I don't see where the investment is going, if I can't actively see where my money is going, if I can't tangibly feel it, a lot of people shy away from trying to give.
Well, I think it's incumbent upon us to help folks understand what philanthropy is, because you may never see the impact of your gift, but you know that it helps. So, Leon, I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
You work at Christopher Newport.
That's correct.
You went to Jackson State University.
That's correct too.
Do you have a sense of the difference in perspective of Black philanthropy and giving and white philanthropy and giving?
I had to go back to something that Terry and Tom said about philanthropy before I address the question. Philanthropy is love. And the definition of philanthropy is you give to a cause. And you give to a cause because you believe in that cause. Like I may give to the March of Dimes, or I may give to the American Heart Foundation. And the reason why I give to it is because it meant something to me, or it helped my family member, or that association organization helped my family member at one point in time. Okay. And so when I think about the giving with historically Black colleges, most will give back because of an experience, or they really realize the value that they got from the university. And, to be open and honest, sometimes because of the fact that we had a bad experience at a college or our university or our alma maters, we will not give back to that university. So what I noticed at a Christopher Newport University, or even some of our predominantly white universities, is that they create a culture of giving. And that culture of giving is not just after they graduate. The culture of giving is while they are there. And I feel like at our HBCUs, we try to create that culture of giving after they have graduated. And I think that is one of the main differences in the philanthropic, givings between those who give at a HBCU and those who give at a predominantly white university.
I agree. When you come in, and now it's a long time ago when I attended Hampton, but there was a basic course we took our freshman year. I can't remember what we called it, but I've always thought, and I've got other Hampton alums, one of whom is a financial planner, and he says he doesn't know why there's not, as you go out your junior year and senior year, that you get required course in giving and financial management or personal finance. It doesn't need to be a three credit course, but it needs to be a required course. And in that course, you can start planting the seeds about, you need to return funds to this school, and this is why. And that's how you move people from church giving or just giving to philanthropy. When I first came out of Hampton, I was giving to Hampton, but I didn't understand really how I was giving to Hampton, because I was a football player. So I joined the Booster Club. Well, I was giving to Hampton, but that's not why I did it. I was a football player, and I wanted to join the Booster Club. Then as I matured, I understood that these things all go together. So then when I go back to my employer, and I look at the things that the school may need, then I say, well, here's something that the company ought to give to. And that's when you start leveraging that education you got at Hampton and say, okay, well, I'm getting close to the C-suite. Now it's time to start asking for things that have commas in them and maybe two. But you can't be afraid to do that. But the kind of graduates we have coming out of Hampton, we ought to be asking that question. That's right. And preparing our graduates to do that.
That's right.
But we have to remember that a lot of HBCU grads are still first generation college graduates. And so the wealth that is accumulated for many PWIs where, they're getting accepted because dad and mom are, been donors for 5 years. And so it's expected that you're going to be a legacy. And I know people probably wouldn't necessarily put that in writing, but that's also a factor in HBCU giving, is that a lot of us are just trying to stay in school. And so the thought of, giving is so foreign, because then you're trying to establish your career. And what does it mean to, go after a career? You have to look the part. You have to, find the place to live and the transportation. So that sometimes limits perspective, I think, but as you're saying, there's no reason that we shouldn't begin those conversations. At CNU, people start giving, students are encouraged to start giving their sophomore, junior, senior years with homecoming. The senior class gift has been a huge success. Every year there are hundreds of thousands of dollars that are left. Parents are often solicited for giving. So it just kind of, it is such a multi-tiered approach to giving for PWIs.
But can I push back on something a little bit? And I really want some responses to this. So, not sure if you know, on average, Black people give more of their disposable income to church than do the majority community. So when I hear people say they don't have it, I don't believe it. So one of the things, I want to come back to this culture of giving. If I have $50 and I give a portion to the church, and I really believe that the institution that I went to made it possible for me to get a job that pays me X number of dollars, I believe, in addition to your church tithe, you ought to give some to your school. That's what I believe. And personally, Jamelia, it's not coming after you per se, but I'm saying I want to challenge that paradigm. I want to challenge that point of view that because you're a first generation student, you may not have the means, your parents don't have the means. That's one way we're going to get to that culture of giving, to say, you know, I may only can give you $5 a month, but by God, I'm going to do it on a consistent basis.
Yes, and to your point, so there was an annual giving webinar that I just participated in, and they were talking about the importance of the smaller gifts, the $5, $10, $25 gifts. Mm-hmm. And one of the examples they used was Michael Bloomberg's $5 gift in 1965 to Johns Hopkins. So you're absolutely correct. $5 in 1965.
And how much did that turn into?
Exactly, millions. They probably can't even count.
I'm working on my dissertation. I can tell you how much he gave. He gave $40 million to Johns Hopkins in 2019, maybe more. So yes, I think to your point, Leon, the culture of giving has got to be something that we deal with head on.
But when you talk about a culture of giving, it's different than a culture of giving a certain amount. And oftentimes when I get, information from, my alma mater, Jackson State, sometimes they would say, well, could you give, $20 or could you give $50 to this cause or donate to the Gap Fund? And I don't have a problem with giving or contributing. But when we think about philanthropy, it has to be that philanthropic spirit of giving. You have to create that by not just an amount, but just for the fact that you give. And so the culture of giving that I refer to is, I just want you to give. If you can only give $5, that's great. If some who are, more well-established and they can give $100, that's great. But those little $5 and those little $100, they add up. And so you got to create that culture of giving. But when we think about philanthropy, we think about the thousands of dollars or the billions of dollars.
I'm glad you said that.
And so when someone say, hey, I'm a philanthropist. And so if I'm a philanthropist, that means I'm out here, giving away millions of dollars.
Rolling.
And that may not necessarily be the case. And I love the fact that sometimes when we think about giving, it may not always be in terms of financial giving. It can be, I can volunteer, I have a service that you can use and I may not charge you for. So when we think about the term of giving, I think we gotta sometimes look beyond dollars and start looking at services that someone could render that, hey, you don't have to pay for it. So even though they didn't give you a specific dollar amount, they save you some dollar amounts on specific types of services that
I'll let you have that, but we're gonna come back to it. So Terry, because I have something for that.
Sounds good. I'm ready.
Well, just to interject what Leon and Tom was saying, basically, though, I think when we're talking about the African American giver, though, we're like Leon, Tom was saying about church. We may be in church every week. We have a resource. We have a way to actually feel what we're giving. Whereas at a university or an institution, we're not there every week, so we have to see it digitally. We have to see it via a screen. And I think if we create better relationships or partnerships with those persons that then can create a long-lasting situation, then I think that covers the twofold, because then, as you were saying, the dollar amount, it should be some commas, but then some are confused. I can't give $5,000. I can only give $5 today, but maybe $300 next week. And then, so therefore, if it's a relationship, like a pledge over a long period of time, then if it's understood that we can do it that way, or more can do it that way, I think we would get more if it's somewhat defined.
better defined. And so, Quincy?
Well, the funny thing is, I think it was my junior year, it was Day of Giving here at Hampton, and we were trying to recruit some band members to actually man the phones for it. And the running joke was that I was getting ready to graduate and I should start giving back. So everybody started calling my phone. So I was like, okay, y'all know I ain't got no job, I ain't got nothing. But, however, you said this is directly going to the band, right? And I think hearing something that I spent, umpteen hours in during my collegiate career, it became, okay, this is easy to give to. Now, I will be honest with you. After that, I met with the director of Alumni Affairs, and I said, "Nah, I ain't got no money for real, but I'm gonna give you this 10 cents." And so, listen, this is where it becomes interesting. And I said, I gave her the 10 cents, and I said, "I have a plan." And she said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "So if I give 10 cents this month, if I give 10 cents every month, then that starts to build up. Then I'm gonna add 10 more cents every year, until I can get to a place where I can add $5, I can add $10. But it became real for me because I had 10 cents. And I knew that this program gave back to me and I can give 10 cents. And yes, I am still giving. I'm up to 25 cents, y'all. But it's something that I know for a fact I can give back. It doesn't hurt my pockets. I've been in positions where I've had $0, but I do know that somebody somewhere, and you dig in a couch somewhere, you can find 25 cents because that's the commitment that I gave. And so you hear that if you have some type of even a small commitment, and I appreciate that you guys brought up small gifts because I honestly forgot because I've just been doing this, and I started in 2017. And so I think if you start thinking of it that way and we propose it that way to the younger generation, they don't feel like they have to, even $5 for some people is too much. They can't, but they want to do something, and you don't want to push those people to the side either.
And that's the culture that you want to create.
Yeah,
it's not about how much.
She brought tears to my eyes.
It's not about how much you can give, but at the same time, and I think what needs to be highlighted, oftentimes our respective universities only want to highlight those big donors. Mm-hmm. They won't tell a story like I had a student that come in and started giving 10 cents. And then next year they gave 20 cents
That's a hell of a story.
Monthly basis. Those are the types of stories that create that culture of giving. Because if you can give 10 cents, I know I can give 10 cents. Right. I can look around the house and maybe I can scrap up 50 cents. Mm-hmm. I'm 5 months ahead.
I want to ask her something. What is it about the experience that made you want to do that? When you knew you didn't have it, but you said, you know what, I am going to give back. What was it?
It goes back to the church, honestly, because my parents always instilled in me that if you do for others, it does come back, and not in the ways that you think it comes back. So a perfect example, I've been doing that for the university, and Dr. Jones, I really didn't have it to go with them to France. I'm gonna be honest with you. I mean, Italy. I wanted to go to France, but to go to Italy. And he said, just keep working and just keep going. And just so having that memory of just somebody who instilled something in you, it makes you want to do it for somebody else. And so it makes you want to get to the point where you can do it for someone else.
That's right.
And so I think having my parents instill that in me and me seeing them do it when they didn't have it sometimes, and then growing into that, it kind of helps. So even though some people don't have that, I want to be that for somebody else.
Well, so I want to pivot real quick. So we have Norfolk State in the house, we have Hampton in the house, and we have Jackson State in the house, along with CNU. Why don't our HBCU alum give? Tom has his hand up.
I think that our HBCUs don't sell themselves to the students while they're here and how important it is to give. They turn it in, you hear, Hampton does a little bit better job than some others, but you just go to school, you go to class, you graduate, and you go home. Well, best 4 years of my life, almost killed me. But 1973.
It was that groove I grew.
1973 to 1977, if I could do it all over again, I would. But, it's Hampton meant something to me. It became part of my fiber. When I hit this campus, I almost feel like it's 1977 again till that arthritis kicks in. In fact, a couple of years ago at homecoming, they brought all the football players back, and we all came out of the chute. Oh, Lord. And I was like, good Lord, I forgot how far 100 yards was. But I think that you got to have a reason to give. Yeah. Like when I go out and raise funds for nonprofits, I've got an elevator speech. So I can get you in 2 or 3 minutes. I can tell you why it's important for you to give. I'm also going to research you and find out what kind of things you like to give to before I get you on that elevator and give you that spiel. Well, I think we need to do a better job. At one time, I was treasurer of the National Hampton Alumni Association.
Okay.
And, Bill Harvey is one of the most prolific fundraisers in college, okay?
In America.
And he spoke to us, and he said, give something. So when he goes and calls on Xerox and IBM and Chrysler, and they say, well, what's your alumni give? They don't want to know how much. They want to know what percentage. That's right. And it's so.
But Tom, I'm going to stop you there. Mm-hmm. I believe everybody that's gone to an HBCU has an experience, something that school did for them that going to a PWI would not have.
Oh, yeah.
But the alumni giving rate as compared to PWIs is abysmal.
Right.
Dreadfully low.
Because we don't prepare them.
And I won't accept that after so maybe the culture of giving hadn't been nurtured to the extent it should have been while you were here for those 4 years. So talk to me though, when you leave and you get that big gig and you balling, why are we not seeing that engagement?
Peer pressure. So, like, I've got a class reunion coming up in 2022. You know what I'm saying? 2022. So, we've been on the phone talking to each other. Now, the older you get, the more you start talking about raising your gifts. Okay. So, everybody's on the phone and saying, well, guys, we've got a school almost for everybody ought to be able to give. You don't know what everybody's circumstances are. We said, everybody's got to have $1,000, and you got 3 years to get ready. I mean, you ought to have at least $1,000. And some are going to have more. And then some get encouraged, but say, well, if you're going to give $1,000, I'm going to give $2,000. Because, we got egos. Now, if it's that kind of thing that encourages, so that's where I think the school has to help build that sort of competition. At graduation every year, at the graduation dinner, and all the classes, reunion classes, start announcing their money. That everybody ends up giving more money that night at the dinner. Why? Because ego.
It's a competition. Trying to wait to see.
And so, and it's actually fun. So, I think we just got to build that in earlier. And, good idea might be if you're a junior and say, hey, how about starting with $1 a month now while you're here? Because Hampton folks, not many poor students going here.
I have 2.
Yeah.
So yes,
I guess instead of saying poor, I should have said po.
Po.
Because there's a difference. So they got $1, and I think that's the thing. And once you build it, then it gets to be easier to give another $1 next year. Just like she was saying, it just makes sense.
But that's passion, though, to give 10 cents, though. What do you mean?
So from a practitioner perspective, to hear Quincy's story, You think, okay, so her alumni affairs director will stay in touch with her. They will build relationships with her. And as her income grows, as her wealth grows, she will remember that you valued my small donation, and then you treated me with respect, and I felt like this was such a great, fun thing for me, so I kept giving. And then when she becomes that teacher and opens up her music school and it's grossing $1 million a year, she's gonna remember that. And that's what we've got to do. We have got to build those relationships with each and every person, to your point. And then once you do that, then we have to talk about the vehicles of giving. So yes, African Americans do have wealth, because I feel bad. You're like, I'm not gonna accept your no money comment. I'm not saying that. I'm never going back to saying that. But what I am saying is there are many vehicles for giving when you start thinking about planned giving and estate giving. So maybe Quincy will never have $100,000 in her lifetime, right?
Put that on her.
Well,
Do not put that on her.
In cash to give away, all right, Quincy, because Quincy's school is running. She's got a family.
Okay.
But in Quincy's will, her life insurance policy, 10% of that could be designated
Now
to
we
Hampton
getting there.
University.
Now we
And
talking.
that's what we've got to do. Those are the conversations we need to have with African Americans about
And
giving.
it helps to see it.
And
To actually see it.
Yeah, and I also want to say,
And then we're gonna come to you, T.
we create this culture giving with the students, but the Alumni Association, and like Tom said, there are so many different ways to give. I was in science, so if the physics say, well, we are trying to raise funds to send kids to do summer programs, would you be willing to give? Oh, sure. I can remember when I was there, and an experience just comes to mind, like, well, yeah, they paid for me to go, to MIT and to Fermi Lab and to some of these, to Jefferson Lab. That's how I heard about Hampton University, through those experiences. And so through the different ways, through football, through band, but the Alumni Association has to be willing to step in. I was a senior class president at Jackson State. So they say, well, hey, you were the class of 97. And being the class of 97, then we want you to reach out to others. Here's a list of other, graduates during that time frame. And could you gather the troops, if you will, or rally the troops in order to give? But we have to think of it as we're giving to a cause. I think Terry said it best. What am I giving these dollars to?
Well, how did they answer the question?
Where are they going to? Well, they would tell you they go to scholarships.
Okay. You like that?
Or they could tell you they could be going to various programs. Well, let us dictate where we want our funds to go to.
Really?
If this what was important to us in 97,
Okay.
then
That's
we want our
interesting.
funds to go to this particular one. And hey, in today's time, and not to get too far off topic, but in today's time, we're in a society where we're talking about, social injustice. Well,
Okay.
maybe we want to know what the university is doing as it relates to social injustice, and maybe this now what we want to raise our funds to. Not to say giving out scholarships is not important, because at the end of the day, some students are going to need those scholarships. But by me joining a local alumni association here in the Hampton Roads area, I'm in an association that you really gear towards raising funds for Jackson State University. But nevertheless, we do feel it's important for us to make a contribution to the community that we're in. And so we participate in Salvation Army. It's that branding that goes back. So our alumni associations have to get good at branding themselves. And if I see, well, wow, that was Hampton University on television. Wow, man, that's my alma mater. Oh, wow, he represented Jackson State. It's those things that they should capitalize, and they should highlight, what the students are doing, what the alumni associations are doing, that might make that person give.
All right. Terry, and then I want to get to each of you guys telling me a personal responsibility, because, and I'm going to get to you, but I want to set this up so y'all can think about it. We've talked about what the university can do and what classes ought to be offered to cultivate this culture of giving, and how we should brand ourselves better. But I really believe we have to look ourselves in the mirror and start thinking about personal responsibility. So I want you all to think about, if you had something to do, if you had one thing that you could do, what would you do to inspire and enthuse folks about giving to their alma maters, their HBCU alma maters? But Terry.
I think what I was going to interject is that, and can play into the question you just asked as well as the question before of the HBCU giver. I'm intrigued to understand or know, being a music major, I think I had one of the best experiences available to man, being in the Norfolk State University Marching Spartan Legion.
Wow. Some of us may have a different point of view on that.
And as well as them being a member of the Norfolk State University Concert Choir. And I was strong in both of those entities.
We give you props.
Thank you.
Behold, green and gold.
But what I'm saying is that, as she was saying, the passion from those two ensembles drove me throughout my tenure at the university. So therefore, I knew then, as it was defined when I did graduate, even with a master's, to say, this is what I want to give back to the band, the choir, the music department. So now I know exactly, as you're saying, where those dollars are going to, whereas at times I would like to know a science major, an English major, do they garner the same experience as that person that's in a band that's spending hours and hours out the day of the concert choir, hours throughout the week, bunch of performances versus just being in a class, if you understand what I'm saying.
All right, that's excellent observation. You have to be touched in a way.
Yes.
And be inspired. But I do want to get back to the personal responsibility. Yes, there are things that institutions can do better. But like I said, Leon, I'm not going to let this panel off the hook, because as a fundraiser, my job at Hampton University involves major gift, endowment giving, fundraising. And I can tell you through my research for this doctoral degree, the statistics between, I'll give you an example. The top 10 institutions with the largest endowments in America are, most notably all PWIs. And one of them has an endowment somewhere around 35 billion. The lowest one was somewhere around 10 billion. All 102 accredited HBCUs in America, the endowments do not total $2 billion. Do you know what the institution that has a $2 billion endowment, they are 200 and some odd on the list of top endowments in US. So it says to me, we have a disconnect. We have a disconnect around giving, because maybe it is, one of you said we don't understand what it does, that we want to give to passions that we are passionate about. But I do think, and Tom, you're a banker. Mm-hmm. You understand the power of money and how it grows over time. And I'm interested in this personal responsibility. Why are we not giving? Are there horror stories out there? What should we do to inspire greater investment? And that's the word I use, investment in our HBCUs, namely Hampton.
Well, yeah, I think when you're talking about the amounts, it's going to be a while before we can start achieving the amounts that the PWIs have. But primarily because we still got first and second generation going to college. So there's no generational wealth. So, if you've got parents sending kids to college who are living in an apartment, then this may be the first home that family is going to have, where they've got their own home. But that's all well and good. You still got a responsibility to give. It's just like tithing, and there's nothing like a Baptist preacher when he starts telling you about tithing.
Amen.
My pastor has a favorite line, because he says, well, 10%. Well, they said, well, is that gross or net? And his response is, depending if you want a gross blessing or a net blessing. And I say, I take any kind of blessing I can get. But I think that we've got to start there. But it is a responsibility to give. But again, that's got to be learned, just like you learn to give in church. And we've got to have role models who gave. And we give in church because our parents, our grandparents, our aunties, they all gave. So you grow up, it becomes second nature. So it's on that first and second generation college attendee to send that down through their next generations to learn how to give. So my kids hear me talking about giving. Now, my daughter went to a PWI. She don't want to give anything. My son went to an HBCU, and, he gives them something.
Is she gonna get mad at you for saying that? Is
No.
is that really real talk?
Well,
real time. That's interesting.
My daughter's got a little bit of Angela Davis in her. So,
I get it.
But it's funny. My son was in private school in high school. I took him out of public school because he was too much like his daddy. So, but
and tell him what that means.
Yeah, I can't tell you. But when it came time to graduate, he's a pretty good athlete. He's getting all these offers from all these PWIs. He looked me in the eye and said, "I can't do it." He said, "I did what you wanted for the last 3 years. I'm done." He said, "I've been to too many homecomings in Hampton with you." I said, "Well, that's not what all school's about, but he had decided that's one. And now he went to Virginia State. He lives Virginia State.
What in the world? Tom!
He didn't want to come to Hampton because he didn't want to be my son in Hampton.
Oh, okay.
And that's when, and Don Rose was a coach there, and Don was a teammate of mine.
Yeah.
And he said, "I'm not going to Hampton." But, I think that's where you build that culture. So he gives because he sees me giving to Hampton, and he's tied to his school. He won't miss a homecoming. My daughter probably has never been back to VCU.
Wow. So you just flipped the script on me a little bit that time. So Jamelia, you're in advancement development at CNU, and you also worked at an HBCU in advancement. What are the experiences like? How are they different?
Well, they're different in that PWIs typically have the infrastructure, and so they're educating their donors on how they can get involved and the ways to give, to my point earlier. So HBCUs have to take more initiative to educate the population, to educate their donors on the ways that you can make that dollar stretch. There are just so many different vehicles, from insurances to charitable remainder trusts, very sophisticated ways of giving, but those are how the generational wealth is built and how these large gifts are being donated to organizations. But then you also have stories of the maid that was, I think, in Mississippi or so, who really made minimum wage all of her life and saved her money. And we all have grandmas that know how to save money and save the money and donate it. I can't remember to what institution. But I think one thing that, in preparation for this conversation, that really kind of stuck out to me was this cultural revolution that we're experiencing, particularly for our generation. It's a great time to be alive. It's a great time to be Black. And we have more money than we've ever had before. And so, just being able to donate through what's happening now to support various organizations. HBCUs should be our African American cultural epicenters, our philanthropic epicenters. We have Black Philanthropy Month. That is a new awareness or a new initiative that's happening. I think it's just only a couple of years old, but Black philanthropy is happening. We're not raising enough awareness about the people and their stories and how they're giving. It is happening. We just don't know about it. And so I think the other part of it that might be revolutionary for HBCUs. So my late husband was a graduate of Hampton, and that HBCU experience isn't just for the person who graduated. It's a Black American experience. Like, you know what it is to go to homecoming. You know what it is to have Miss Hampton pageants or what have you. So, and I think we've also not talked about the impact of the sororities and fraternities in giving, because that's where all of our people are, right? The majority of them are with Alpha Kappa Alpha or Phi Beta Sigma or what have you.
Yes.
So in terms
we'll
of
take that.
Right, in terms of, and Delta Sigma Theta and all the other ones. And so in terms of targeting philanthropy, a lot of philanthropy happens at those organizations.
So you're saying opportunity lost?
I think, or generated elsewhere, because they are giving back to their national organizations and focusing on initiatives that change every 4 years depending on your national leadership structure. So that's one area. But I think what HBCUs could consider is the cultural experience of the HBCU. Right. So I went to a PWI, but my affinity, I'm a Black woman, like I care about HBCUs. And so that's where I was challenged to say, what HBCU am I supporting, even though I haven't gone to one, but I know Hampton, I love Hampton, I love a lot of people that went to Norfolk State, Virginia State, you know, I think that's a missed opportunity, in fact, is that people who didn't attend, can we get them into our universe? Because that's the beauty of higher ed giving, right? Is that you have a universe of people that will be your donors, and you don't have to go buy a list of people. You've got people that came and had this amazing experience. So what could we do to bring more of the culture into our giving?
Both you and Tom, I think a little bit to your extent, Leon, talked about how HBCUs are so important to our culture, to our race. They were started because we're not able to be educated any other place. I can give you some history, like the Second Morrill Act that was brought about for land-grant institutions and all that kind of stuff, but I won't do that. But at any rate, honestly, I just could not agree more, Jamelia, that HBCUs represent something different, more than an academic institution.
I just have to jump in, and this is a thought that is just, since you told me, I guess, your own personal experience, but you said something. Do I look at giving as being a fundraiser for the university, or do I look at it as being a philanthropic effort on my part? And I think we got to distinguish between the two. You said it best, a philanthropic month. That's different than a fundraiser.
Hold on, Leon, let's stop there for a second. Okay. Explain what you mean by that, the difference between, in your mind's eye, philanthropy and fundraising, because we need both.
You need both, but it's a mindset. Philanthropy means I'm giving to a cause. Fundraiser means I'm going out.
The cause is your institution, though.
But fundraiser means I'm going out and just collecting money. It's to me, it's a mindset.
Like
it's a mindset difference.
Selling Katie beers.
So if you come to me and say, well, yeah, this is a fundraiser for the Boy Scouts, I said, okay, all right, I may be more willing to give.
Okay.
But let's just say, when you're saying, well, hey, this is a philanthropic effort, where we are trying to raise funds for this particular cause here. Because see, it's all about the cause.
Well, the wording is what you're.
And so I'm not a wordsmither, if you will. But when we talk about, I am. But words are important, and words play with the psychology of our thoughts.
Okay. Yeah.
So if I feel like I'm just giving money just to be giving it, I'm not going to give. But if I feel like, oh well, I'm being philanthropic, I'm a philanthropist. If you will.
Would be what remember he said he was not words right.
That was the colored version. Oh my God! But it's a mindset of, am I just giving funds just to be giving, or I'm giving funds to for a specific cause, and those two words could mean something different to different people.
It's marketing.
If you don't,
now
I think assume people should understand it. They should get it.
You can't assume. You just can't. So if
especially when you talk about the person's dollar.
Yeah.
Right.
So I look now in the last 2 or 3 weeks, some of the top basketball players in the country are talking about, I got just as much chance to make it to NBA out of these HBCUs. Well, Rick Mahorn did all right.
Yes, he did.
Did fine. Reggie Doss did fine. Don Rose did fine. I mean, they're guys that play here, went to the pros.
we could go on.
So when we talk about,
so you raised something, efforts, I'm getting ready to mess with you.
But athletics need to be funded. So I give you a perfect example. Last week, Mr. Marshall and Jermaine called me. I'm a booster. I'm a member of Hampton Nation. They called just to check on me, see how I was doing, tell me what was going on. Well, you think I'm going to give again this year? Yeah.
Heck yeah.
So, but it's all about outreach. And if you call me.
Do you think our athletes are giving back? As a controversial topic.
No. And I'll tell you, some of our pro athletes don't give back.
That's where
I told you, in case my bishop would see this, this is where I would have used the cuss word. Because they got free education, one of the best educations in the United States. And they won't give a dime back, particularly those. Now, I will tell you that when Don took over that role as assistant athletic director, in trying to get funds in, that's when he started reaching out to the guys that came through our area to give back. That's what got Hampton Nation going. And so then we've got the conflict. We got the conflict of the booster saying we've been giving for years, and now you got this new Hampton Nation thing, and their seats are better than my seats, and you got all that going. So I just saw the whole thing. I joined both. I don't have to get in the argument. But
That's right.
It's that kind of concerted effort to go after people. So in the music department ought to be approaching the music grads. The science department, the STEM areas ought to be approaching the STEM grads, because those are people you had contact with. That's right. So if I'm looking at those department heads, they generally don't teach a lot of courses. Somebody in their office ought to be managing that process along with the Alumni Association. So to push that giving, because most folks are inclined to give if somebody just asks them. But if you leave them to their own devices, they won't do it.
Let's get the young person's point of view, and you're the representative young person, by the way. So how do you feel about what we're just talking about right now, about philanthropy versus fundraising and athletes giving and ways to motivate and inspire more giving? What's your point of view on all of this?
I think you stated it best. He got a phone call. A lot of the time, that's what it takes. We call a lot of people out the band.
How come they won't call us?
One thing I will say is this: if you don't see it happening, like if you actively don't see it. So personally, I have a big sister in the band sorority who calls me on
the band. What?
Top 8 Sigma National Honorary Band sorority.
Oh, okay.
Yes. But she'll call me and say, "Hey, can you go by alumni affairs and check on my giving?" Now she'll do it on purpose because she wants me to see it. And I've noticed she'll do it with other people, and the people that she's doing it with are those who are giving. So seeing an alum do it and actively engaging you in the process, starting during undergrad and before you graduate, that helps. So it does make a difference. It differentiates between the fundraising and philanthropy, because now I'm consistently giving philanthropically. Now, however, there are different fundraisers that are happening, but I am consistently giving philanthropically on this side. That's a donation that doesn't get touched, and I think that's what people don't understand is once this is happening, don't touch that. Everything else is a fundraiser.
It's like the building fund at church. Like you still have to give your
you
tithes
still give
and
your
offering,
tithes, but you're
when
raising
we're doing that
funds
building
for something
fund,
else.
that's over and above.
That's right. That's right.
So
okay, keep going.
Yeah, so when you look at it like, and when you relate it to something that people see often, like church, like that, and you put it in, okay, well you're giving me this on a regular basis. Okay, we're tithing 10%. Everything else is above and beyond, correct? So therefore, if I am now saying I'm giving the university this, so my 25 cents, I'm giving my 25 cents to the university, when the band calls me and asks me for something, or when my chapter calls and asks me for something, that's not taking away from the philanthropic
She's got the right
donation
idea.
That's already happening over here.
I see you on a poster. I see you in a commercial. No, in all seriousness, guys, from my perspective, as I sit here, we've drunk the Kool-Aid. We get it. We're doing the best we can. We volunteer. We give our treasure, our time, our talent. What about the person who doesn't get it? If you had to, the person out there saying, look, that professor failed me, and all she had to do was give me 2 points. They didn't take me when I knew I should have made line. What do you say? But they still graduated. What do you say to that person to inspire them, and they haven't been engaged here?
At that point, I would basically have to give them where this is going, part of the legacy or the road that's getting ready to happen. What are you giving to, and what is it going to do? The vehicle that's going to happen for that person, supplying for them, again, as we talked about the definition, at times even potentially, and I know this may step on toes, but at the church we look for, or when we're giving, we want to know what's the whole budget? What are you getting, and where is it coming from? Then if I give you this,
You
is
think
it
black
really,
people are more picky
yes,
about that kind
about
of
me,
thing?
that's what I'm saying. We need to know.
Why is
we
that?
need to know. We need to know.
I hate to say that.
Yeah,
Like,
money's
maybe
tight.
y'all can edit that out or something. But it's something about you gave $25.
We want to break
And
down.
now you want to know what $5
Every
went here.
penny.
But here's the thing: if you have a bad experience at McDonald's,
Yeah.
do you stop going to McDonald's? You do not. You will go back. You maybe we'll go to a different McDonald's. We go back when the ice cream machine is broken time after
Every
time,
time.
and we give grace to McDonald's.
Yeah.
But we can't give grace to our own institutions. So that would be my follow-up to that person, like, listen,
Come on now. Come on now.
we have to do this. This is critical
But
because,
sometimes you have to be blunt
yeah, you
and
do.
just say, not about you.
Yeah. It's about what's coming out of
Yeah.
Who is it about?
It's about the next student.
There we go.
You know,
But I hate to interrupt. But then is there
We want you to.
is there a database?
Yeah.
No, I understand.
Oh.
Is there a database? So the 5 of us graduate from Terry Butler University, and then we go off. And then, do you have our information? Is there a way to actually get in touch with us? To then, as you said, the relationship, reaching out to establish and keep this relationship. We don't want to only reach out at the back to school fundraiser and homecoming annual giving campaign, and then that's it.
Very well said.
And that's a good point. You just can't just contact me when you want money.
That's it.
And like even here, being a part of the Jackson State University, the local alumni chapter, and we have a list of local alumni in the area. And I will reach out and say, well, hey, just come and just hang out with us. Just meet who we are. It's not about dudes. It's not about participating in our fundraisers. Just come and just meet us and just affiliate and associate with us. And hopefully the chapter is doing something that would make them want to be a part of what we're doing in the community, but maybe make them to reflect back. Because too many times we focus on the negative, that one
That's what we
thing,
do.
that one thing that happened.
And that $25 that I got to find out what percentage went everywhere.
That's right.
So, Sarah, do you volunteer?
Yes, I do.
Are you
volunteer.
do you participate with fundraising outreach?
I do participate in fundraising outreach, and I've even had, and what really brought me back to giving to my university was actually establishing a local chapter here. For about 10 years, I was out here. No one reached out to me. The nearest chapter was in D.C. I had a couple people reach out, but I thought at that point in time, well, I'm not going to D.C. to go to just a chapter meeting. But they seemed like they made it about coming to a meeting, not about, well, hey, just be active, just be involved, or even become a national member, to the alumni association. And so when we started investing in the person, and like you said, making them realize that, well, it ain't about your time when you were there. It's about this generation that's coming up, because we want them to be educated. We want them to have better opportunities than what we have had, and we want them to be the next leaders. So if I can get this young man or this young woman to get this mindset, they get to a point where I am sooner than I get there, and then they reach back to another young man or another young woman, then the cycle continues to repeat itself. And then, you know what, maybe we now get over this $2 billion mark.
Thank you.
Of all HBCUs.
I'm glad you remembered that. So, Jamelia, I want to ask you a question. I happen to know that you have 2 beautiful young people at home. How do you describe philanthropy to them?
That is a great question, actually, Felicia. Well, certainly I demonstrate it through tithes and offering with our church. And when they have fundraisers at school, I explain to them why it's important, why you have to raise these funds. Your school budget doesn't necessarily provide all that you need in terms of your gym equipment, or if you all want new water fountains. And my daughter's school actually taught them about fundraising, and I kept trying to inch in there, and she didn't want my help, but she wanted to do it on her own. But they actually came up with a plan to figure out how to get more recyclable goods in the school. And so that's really, part of it is everyone has a more heightened awareness of it. But in our home, it just is natural. You give back and you give money.
I have to be honest with you. I've been a fundraiser for, I guess, the last 10 to 15 years. Before that, I did a number of different things. I never had a conversation in my family about giving other than to the church. And I believe that's one of the barriers we have that we have to overcome. We got to help parents, when they're like this, explain what it's like, not just to your HBCU, but in life in general. We are just about ready to wrap up, but I would love to hear closing thoughts around giving in the African American community to HBCUs. Maybe 30-second, 45-second. This much I know is true.
Basically, to define the role of what's happening with our actual gifts and provide that vehicle and that opportunity to give us a relationship with the persons that we're seeking versus just looking at them as a commodity or a dollar.
Quincy?
I would have to say understand the power of the black dollar and understand that it's very strong, and we have a lot of control over the way things move within our economy, and allow us to see what makes sense in terms of giving.
Jamelia?
Just simply to leave a legacy. That is what we really should be focused on, is just do what you can to support institutions that care about who you are at your core, because we are seeing that other institutions don't, and so we must keep these institutions alive.
To the universities, brand yourself. And to us who are giving, realize that it's not about us. It's about the generation that comes after us.
Awesome. And Tom, you get the last word.
Two things. One, I think you got to participate. You know, you sometimes you get drafted. If you know Joan Wickham, Joan drafted me into the National Alumni Association. You can't tell Joan no. But in my roles, I've had the ability to hire people. Well, when I see a resume come through and I look on that resume, I see an HBCU or I see Hampton University. Guess what? You know, somebody's starting to move along to the top. Now, they got to perform. But I expect them to be able to perform. And then when I hire them, I can talk to them about giving back to their HBCU. So it's come full circle.
This has been a phenomenal conversation. We need to have more. Keep it up. And thank you for joining the HamptonYOU Live Roundtable discussion on philanthropy and the Black community and giving to our HBCUs.